Crystal.
Hi.
So today we're gonna talk about mysteries. Have you ever played Clue?
Yes.
Clue is one of my favorites. And do you remember the mystery we did last week on um, the murder case that happened? Awesome. Do you remember the victim's name?
No.
It was Mr. Meyer.
Mr. Meyer.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember how, where he was?
It's in his bathroom.
Yeah. And do you remember, do we know how he was murdered?
I don't think so, or I can't remember.
No, we didn't really know.
There were just some clues.
But there were clues. That's exactly the point. There were things. What were some of the things that were maybe around?
There was a toothbrush, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the towels was disheveled.
Oh, yeah. That's
water on the floor.
So what do you think could have been a tool, like what we call the murder weapon? Something you use to kill someone.
There was maybe the scale, or he fell on the floor.
Yeah, there was definitely the soap on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the scene right here. And so we see the footprints. What are some other things you see here?
See, his toothbrush still has toothpaste on it. The scale is out. It's not at 0.
That's true. It's broken, isn't it? Okay, so that's good on clues. We've got some good clues to think about what maybe happened. And so let's think about some sentences right here. So someone killed Mr. Meyer last night. And someone knew Mr. Meyer's habits, right? They knew when to find him in the shower. And someone hit Mr. Meyer over the head with the scales in the bathroom. This is just one theory.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. But someone killed him either way, right?
Right.
And so we can sometimes choose to say it in a different way, especially because we don't know who someone is. So it gets kind of tedious or boring, or like we repeat it so much when we say someone, 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 and we don't know who. But we can start with Mr. Meyer. Even though he's over here in the sentence, we can move him over and have it be Mr. Meyer was killed last night. Mr. Meyer's habits were known. Mr. Meyer was hit over the head with the scales in the bathroom. And so what we see here is, like, someone is the subject, right? Killed is the verb, and Mr. Meyer is the object. And what we do when we create these sentences is we turn the object into the subject. We move it over. And like at the end, we could have by someone. If we wanted. It could be Mr. Meyer was killed last night by someone. But we don't need that because it doesn't tell us any new information, right? So we can just move the object forward and just talk about who it happened to. Because we don't know who did the action. We don't know what that looked like. But we know that Mr. Meyer experienced being killed, right?
Right.
So the focus should be on him.
Makes sense.
So this is called passive voice.
Okay.
It's when it's not just the subject doing something. That would be active. It's me doing an action. It's passive because something is happening to me. And like I'm not controlling that action.
Yeah.
Someone else is. So right here we see, exactly what we just talked about. Subject plus verb plus object. Someone killed Mr. Meyer. And then passive, it would be the new subject, which is the object, Mr. Meyer. And then we're going to use a form of to be, because that's always what we're going to be using in passive voice, is was, were, am, all those fun ones. But Mr. Meyer was killed. And they mean the same thing, right?
Right.
And sometimes if we don't change them correctly, they don't mean the same thing.
Okay.
If we forgot the was, for example, it would be Mr. Meyer killed by someone. Like, And so it'd be like Mr. Meyer was murdering someone instead of being murdered.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah. So this is how we put it in the spotlight, like we were talking about, how we make Mr. Meyer the focus of the sentence. And, yeah. Okay, so I want you to do something with this sentence right here. Someone hit Mr. Meyer over the head with the scales in the bathroom. Can you tell me that with Mr. Meyer as the subject?
Mr. Meyer was hit over the head with the scales in the bathroom.
That's perfect. That is exactly right. And you could also say, sometimes
Meyer.
people say Mr. Meyer was hit over the head by someone with the
Okay.
scales in the bathroom, and sometimes we leave by someone out, and it was just that he was hit by scales in the bathroom. Yeah, so to be helps us know that Mr. Meyer is receiving the action, that it's actually happening to him, and that he didn't do it,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so do you remember the past participle? This is what we're changing our words to in these examples.
Okay.
When we're going from someone killed and then Mr. Meyer was killed. This is actually a past participle version, but it doesn't change in that sentence.
Right.
But in this one, someone knew Mr. Meyer's habits. Mr. Meyer's habits were known. So
Yeah.
the word changes. And we usually learn those in repetition chants. See, saw, seen.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, shot, shot. Murder, murdered, murdered. And you see, these two don't change
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
But that one does, and a lot of them do.
Yeah.
So it's just about putting it into the form that makes sense for the past, right? That is not that he was killed. That wouldn't work, right? He was killed, and that happened. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So will you do this for me? Someone knew Mr. Meyer's habits. I want you to put the object first, and then use the to be verb in the
Okay.
correct form.
So Mr. Meyer's habits were known.
Mm-hmm. And that was perfect because you also did the past participle, were known, and you did all of the whole sentence. That was perfect. And you didn't do by, but you didn't have to.
Yeah. Could say by someone at the end.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to look at clue, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so here is the clue weapons. This is a wrench, a candlestick, lead pipe, rope, revolver, and knife. And if I had the board game here, you would be able to see the miniature versions of these. You have them in your hand. And here are the people that might have done it, that might have committed the murder in Clue. So we're trying to figure out who killed Mr. Body. Mr. Body was murdered last night by someone with some weapon in some location. So right here is the board. Can you tell me what these rooms might be?
It looks like that's the formal sitting room.
Yeah, maybe a ballroom.
Yeah. And then that looks like the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
The table in the middle. And then the library over there.
Oh, yep.
And is that a pool table?
Yeah.
Like a game
Billiard room.
Okay. And then some sort of garden?
Yeah, I think we
Sunroom?
call that a conservatory.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we like the weapons. So let's look at these pictures of these guys. So this is Mrs. Peacock, Miss Scarlet, who looks very suspicious. Mr. Green. Well, they all look pretty suspicious. Look
Yeah.
at Mrs. White over here. And Colonel Mustard.
Mm-hmm.
And Professor Plum. Okay, so that's all the people who might have done it, because they're the only people in the house.
Okay.
Okay, so let's try and make a couple active sentences
Okay.
about who murdered Mr. Body. It can just be any guess,
Okay.
but just any claim about someone murdered Mr. Body with this tool in this room.
Okay, so
Okay.
an active.
Mm-hmm. Active.
So Mrs. Peacock murdered Mr. Body with a candlestick in the dining room.
That was perfect. Could you change that to passive for me?
Mr. Body was murdered by Mrs. Peacock with a candlestick in the dining room. Is that what I said?
That was perfect.
Whatever my guess was.
Will you make another one?
With a different person. Another passive would be Mr. Body was murdered in the library with a knife.
Yeah, that is a good passive one. What would be the active version of that?
Who was my murderer in that one?
You didn't have one,
Oh, that's right.
which would make sense because we
Yeah,
don't know who it is. But then if we find out who it is, we might say it in the active form.
Okay, so then Professor Plum murdered Mr. Body